Hey, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Other Job Podcast, a place where we explore all those tasks that are required for building high-performance teams, but we never seem to have enough time to do or to do well. Chris and I started this podcast to share our learnings from being there and doing that for those who want to go there and do that, and hear from voices from the industry to share their experience. Today, we're joined by Mark Kosoglow, Outreach's first seller and all-around great sales leader. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I don't know if I said great. Above average sounds about right.
Yeah, we appreciate
Is it a middling?
Yeah, I mean, Mark, we acknowledge that relative to your powerlifting and weightlifting and bodybuilding accomplishments, pretty good sales leader is probably right in there.
Well, I would put humorist and metaphor creator way above sales skills.
Listen, we had a guest on a couple episodes ago that put Chris's metaphor game to shame. So we like those on this. We like those on this podcast. But we wanted to invite you on to talk about what we think is potentially a modern evolution of how people are working these days, and that is talking about the topic of side hustles. For you, this feels like a new thing. Where do you think it came from?
I think it came from a couple people on LinkedIn making a lot of money, and then somehow they get 10,000 likes a post, and everybody reads it and is like, this can't be too hard. Here's the other thing too, is I think part of it is I think the way that it's being done now might be new, but you know what the old side hustle was? Real estate. I'm going to do some investment properties. I'm going to fix up a house. I know a lot of people that were doing that kind of stuff. What we're seeing now are you create kind of your own company and you do all of this stuff yourself. I think that that's a new thing, but I think a lot of people, do stuff. And me, I came from education. Every teacher has a side hustle in the summer, but they're not working them. But I really do think it's a lot of people on LinkedIn spouting out about how much money they're making with their side hustle, and everybody's like, well, why not give it a shot?
So Mark, it's no secret, I'm no spring chicken. And, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is back in the day, if you were, let me just unpack your origin story a little bit career-wise, because I think this will illustrate the thing I'm talking about. If I remember correctly, by the way, and this is such a compelling story. Okay. Your origin story is truly one in a million unique and very admirable, by the way.
I got lucky.
But there's also some humor in it too. So everybody has to picture in your minds, Mark Kosoglow driving around in the education business, in your Pontiac Sunbird, the coupe, if I'm not mistaken,
and aqua colored exterior. Don't forget that, with a spoiler.
Okay, I did not know that. That's even better.
I was balling.
When times were tight, when there wasn't enough pipeline for you, you never said I'm going to go find a different gig to supplement this gig to make more money. You said, I'm going to go get better at my job and, develop my skills and hone my skills and earn more money through this avenue. And I think I get the real estate thing, but real estate's an incredibly passive source of potential income. Whereas generating content on LinkedIn, and this is a new learning for me, but largely because of this podcast, this takes some, and by the way, we're not even prolific on LinkedIn or social. There's a big lift there for a lot of people. That's a heavy investment. Why do you think the default, and maybe it's not the default, but why do you think people err towards start something new rather than get better at what I'm already doing?
Maybe everybody really hates their job deep down. I don't know. But I agree, Chris. Me running around as a new seller in an outside sales territory. I was a field rep. My boss lives somewhere in West Virginia. I saw him maybe twice a year. Other than that, it was just me doing my thing, and, conference calls every Monday morning. And then every Friday afternoon, I got fined $50. Literally, they would fine my paycheck $50 if I didn't call in and be like, I had 2 external meetings. I had I had to write through like these 9 stats every day. And then somebody would type them into a spreadsheet and send everything out on activity and whatnot. And so, but like for me, it was kind of like when I went to college, I didn't know you could go in the military. I should have known. It was around. I guess I had other people doing it, but it wasn't really an option for me. It wasn't on the table. So it wasn't in my mind. Right. Versus, and then I think the same way about this side hustle thing. Like when I was 24 with 2 mouths to feed and a young family, like I wasn't thinking side hustle. I was like, I got to make my job work. And so maybe it was just like, narrow-mindedness that kept me in that way. But like, I did get really, really good at my job. I took a territory that had not been able to sustain a rep for longer than 6 months for a decade and turned it into one of the top 25 territories in the entire country out of 250 sales reps. And that's not because I had a side hustle. It's because I just really worked hard at my job. And I kind of viewed my job as not just my job, but my hobby and my passion. And so I invested in it, and it provided for me and my family because I did that.
You kind of raised the topic of, maybe people just don't like their jobs enough. It does make me wonder, like if people felt like there was more of a mission in their day-to-day job, their primary hustle, let's call it, not the side hustle. If they felt like their boss cared, their manager cared, they were getting good coaching, they had an avenue to improvement, I wonder if this would be less of a thing, right?
I was so in love with outreach and the mission and the work and the people like y'all. Like, honestly, like I never even thought for a second to spend a time on anything other than outreach. Like it was just all consuming. It was such a passionate thing for me. And I think like, there's people that don't feel that way about their job. And when you do, you're constantly kind of looking for a hobby, for, something fun to do, something different, some variety. And I think now there's just a lot of people that are saying, well, hey, instead of spending time doing things that don't make you money, why not do something fun? And there's so many ways to make money now and to monetize what you like that, why don't I try to figure that out and make money while I'm doing something I like? Because I don't really like my job. I
definitely think that's a thing. Like there's for a while, like a side hustle, like people would go find hobbies, right? Like learning how to bake sourdough bread, like became a thing during COVID, right? Or whether it's that, or you take a blacksmithing class or whatever, right? Like, but now because it's so easy to make money, to like combine those two things, a hobby with making money, like I do think that's part of this.
Well, Mark, I've actually heard a pattern here, right? You said, talking about your first education job, you talked about it being your passion and your hobby, and the same thing with outreach. So the question I guess I have is like, if you as a leader have got a team of people who have side hustles, is that a failure of hiring? Is that an okay thing? Like, is that a failure of capturing their imaginations? Like what, like I hear that from you is the reason you didn't have one earlier. And then,
yeah. But I have two people I can think of. One, both of them you both know, Andrew Mewborn and Alex Kremer. And Andrew has started to build out a real side hustle when he worked at Outreach. His side hustle actually helped him perform better at Outreach. And then it got so big that he didn't have to come back after he had his first kid. And he's grown that into a really, really nice business and gone on to other things that side hustle spun off on. But like, so I don't think it's a problem. Like for me, I always encouraged Mewborn because I thought the better that his side hustle was doing, the better he showed up at Outreach. And the same thing for Alex. Like when Alex worked for me here at Catalyst, Alex had his side hustle, and the better his side hustle did, the better he did for me. So I encouraged it. I just was like, listen, don't forget my time's my time. I'm paying for a part of my time. And whatever you do with your time is fine. But like, let's just make sure that we're not, but I support him. I encouraged him. And now Alex was able to stop working at Catalyst and run his side hustle as a full-time business, just like Mewborn has. And so, listen, like for me as a leader, I just want people to be happy, feel like they're contributing, feel like they're growing, they're passionate about what they want to do. And like, I think as long as those things are in place, like typically like the production that I need as their employer takes care of itself. And, if that means that they only work for me for a couple years and they got to spin off, that's fine. Like, I think I can help grow talent and hire talent to replace people. I'm not that worried about it. I'm more worried about like, is somebody sneaking around behind my back doing a side hustle because they're scared to tell me and it's dipping into my time and I don't even know. And the next thing I know, they quit and I had no clue what was going on. Or they're just like, I'm putting them on a pit because for 3 quarters they're doing their side hustle more than me. That would make me furious. So I just rather just get into it and support them and figure it out on how to make them both win together.
So Mark, what I hear is like the key is, like most things in life, by the way, transparency, good communication. Like the examples you're citing, there was no surprise there.
No.
Right.
They told me about the ideas before they even started. I encouraged them to start the ideas because I could see the passion in that creative momentum. And momentum, as we know, is a powerful force that affects all areas of your life once you have momentum in one area.
I think that's really unique, though. Like if you go Google side hustle, the first website that comes up is a app to help you find side hustles confidentially, so your boss doesn't know you're doing a side hustle.
Well, so I'll even add, Chris, like I checked today, there's over 250,000 people subscribed to the overemployed subreddit. Right. And so I do think, Mark, that your perspective on how you've supported those employees is unique, and potentially the way that those employees came to you with their ideas was also unique.
Yeah. And for me, like, I think, Mark, I'd be in your camp on this. The thing I would want out of my team is, if you feel like you need to go do a side hustle, like, let's talk about the why. Because if it's that you don't feel like you can get better in your current role and meet your needs and your objectives and your goals in your current role, like, I want to know that as a leader.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm with you. Like, if the side hustle is the thing that helps you get there and we can manage the time and the conflict and all that stuff, because inevitably that's going to happen, like, great, that's fantastic. But I'd love to know if my people are in positions where they're unfulfilled, either, kind of like spiritually and emotionally, or, financially, or accomplishments, career growth, whatever it is. And I think it's a shame that so few of those conversations are happening.
Well, it's all about like your energy and the culture. And y'all both worked with me, and I don't know if I'm a great leader or not. I hope I am. I try to be, but I do know this is like, I think I do develop a trust level that you can share stuff with me, and I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to get pissed. I'm going to seek to understand, and I'm going to try to find a great resolution for everybody. And I think if that's like your energy as a leader, people are going to share with you. If your energy as a leader is your pipeline sucks, what the heck are you doing a side hustle? Nobody's ever going to tell you they're doing a side hustle, and then you're never going to get ahead of it. And half your team will be side hustling you out of your own job.
and their pipeline will continue to suck.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. Like, it won't solve either problem. Right. It's I will say, Mark, working for you, I think one of the things that I found was when I look at leaders is how many people are willing to follow them. And if you look at your current role at Catalyst, right, you were able to bring some of the top talent with you. So I think those results speak for themselves for sure. So I wouldn't question that as much as you maybe just have. I think you've got folks willing to follow you and keep you in their circle. So I think that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. I like friends. People are always like, don't let your people that you report to you be your friends. I'm like, that's bullshit. I'm going to be everybody's friend.
I think, Jeff, by the way, just not that anybody's keeping track, but I think that is the first cuss word ever uttered on the Other Job podcast. So we don't have any sort of like censoring capabilities. So there you go. It's out in the wild now.
Well, I just have to mark the podcast as not suitable for children. I think it'll be. So I think we're clear of that bar by a long shot. So let's maybe talk a little bit about, like, how do you then foster that culture? Because there was an experience at a previous company of mine in which an employee started and they were fully employed at their previous employer, and they had doubled up. And at the end of the week, they had lost both jobs, the one at the current company and the one at the previous company. I think they forgot the cardinal rule that the industry we work in is relatively small, and so it's not too hard to figure out. But this always raises really interesting ethical questions. Like, where is the okay line and the not okay line drawn in for you?
So it's funny. I had conversation in the last couple of weeks with some of my team around like, what is your personal ethics bar? And like for me, you know, I have people that like would want me to consult, want me to do advising, want me to do this, like, you know, fractional, this and this and this. But I have a personal level of the amount of work that my employer will get from me because of what they pay me. And at Catalyst, they pay me a lot and they get 50 hours a week. And like, I'm not compromising on that. It makes me feel like a schmuck if I'm not doing at least that, because they're paying me for that kind of attention and stuff. And so I think the way that you build that kind of culture is you help people understand, all right, what is the business's level and what is your level? If there's a gap, we need to address that. If there's not, then we're okay. And you can go do what you want to do. But like, you know, if I'm going to pay an AE $250,000 on a $125,000 base, like I need 40 to 45 hours a week, like no question. If you're not going to do that for me, then go find someone that's okay with it. But that's a bar that I expect as a leader and as a business. And if you're not going to do that, then we should just talk about why that is and what we're going to do about it, because it's not acceptable. And so to me, like that's the first thing is like help people understand what the bar is, what the expectations are, and then how does that match up to their own if they've ever thought about it, which most people haven't. They're just like, well, as long as I, you know, am available, I'm okay. But that's not what we need from sellers right now. This is like we're back, you know, Chris, and I don't know if you're old enough, Jeff, but like this is like old school selling right now. You got to do twice as much work to get the same results as a couple years ago. And so, you know, if you're not going to work and you're only going to be available, then you're not going to be successful right now. You got to work, proactively work.
Yeah. And Mark, to your point, like companies and leaders, the bar is not being available. And I'd go first to say the bar isn't actually even measured in hours anymore. By the way, let me caveat that I'm not advocating for like, you know, turning software sales into the modern day sweatshop, right? Like that's not what I'm saying. But Jason Lemkin actually posted something this morning or like in the last day or so. I think his question was, do you currently deliver 3 to 5x the value that you get paid to your company? If the answer is no, then you should really think hard about that and go find a role where you can deliver that kind of value. And I think that's, as leaders and as companies, that's how we think about it. Like I've never once thought about, I wonder how many hours a day somebody's working. I always think about like the value realization relative to what the company is providing for them. And I think that sheds an entirely different light on that bar, so to speak. Now, is that ethical or is it, you know, more of an aspirational thing? I'm not really sure, but
yeah, I don't clock hours. I never have approved a vacation. I don't need to know when you're going on vacation. Like I don't know when you need time off. Like I'm the same way. I don't look at his hours, but what I do think that you need to do as a leader is help people understand what is your personal bar and are you meeting that consistently or not? And does that actually align to what the business expects of you too? So, you know, listen, we all know of one of the legendary reps at Outreach that probably works 15 hours a week, but he delivers, you know, 2x of his quota every single quarter and definitely every single year. But he doesn't work that much. Yeah, I'm not going to go tell that guy to work more. But at the same time, like, I don't want to make sure that he doesn't get so distracted with something else that he messes up what he's doing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because my head first went to then his territory's wrong, and that like I went from like structurally, how does that happen? And
he's
then
just the best psychological seller on the planet.
100%. But you know what I mean? Like, then is there any higher order function that we could then put that person into in an organization, or does that ruin the whole mix? Right? Who knows?
Well, not to get too specifics, but like that's the lifestyle he wanted. He wants to work 10 or 15 hours a week. He wants to be on a boat fishing. He wants to be with his family. He doesn't want to be in meetings. He just wants to do his thing and stay and make a ton of cash. And so that's what he wanted. So,
let me ask you a question. Like, how do you as a leader is it always like in the conversations in which that person's teammates are saying, what the hell, which is a very natural reaction to that set of facts?
No, I think all of that person's teammates are saying, sign me up for that.
That's exactly what,
all right.
But what's unsaid is the work that had to go into getting to that spot. That's that's that person's current state. It wasn't always that person's state.
No.
That person at some point did what most top performing people do, is they put in the hours, they put in the little things, they put in the grind, whatever. They figured out some hack that nobody else had figured out. They got better at something that nobody else got better at. Whatever it was, they built that reality for themselves in many cases. Okay, now Jeff, I get it. Like in many companies, there's like a magic territory that you just luck into and you find that. Okay, but in a lot of cases, actually, some people like build that reality for themselves. And instead of, this is really like, I think the tie back to this episode, instead of that person having a side hustle, they just really happen to love fishing or baking sourdough or whatever it is. And I think, again, going back to the Lemkin post, like that person's easily delivering 5x value. No problem there at all, in my mind. Yeah. I'd take 100 of those people.
Okay. All right. So we build this forum to help those that are first and second time leaders to understand and to get sort of the perspective and the insight so that they can be successful in their jobs, because a lot of companies don't train their first and second line managers terribly reliably. So I guess maybe the question to both Mark and Chris, because you're both in sales leadership roles, but Mark first, like what would you tell that first or second time manager when you stumble upon an employee's side hustle?
Yeah.
Like how would you approach it?
I think I don't think it has to be a contentious conversation, but it definitely needs to be a conversation of, hey, I noticed you're doing this. And I really like Chris's approach. Like, what do you like? Why? What are your reasons for doing this? And are those reasons that we can meet with your current job, so you don't have to do this, or is this something extra? Honestly, like I don't know if I don't know if I have a good answer. I've never stumbled on one. People always tell me them, and so I never have to worry about stumbling on it. Like I can't tell you how many reps come to me and tell me about their side hustles, and so I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I guess I could be surprised at some point, but I tell you what, as I'm thinking about it right now, what my reaction would be like, yo, Jeff, like heard you're doing a side hustle. Sounds good. Like, tell me about it. Like, is it exciting? Is it cool? Like, how's it going? Like, what's going on? And I'm going to just like act like I'm excited about it, because I probably am. And then everything kind of goes from there versus like, Jeff, we know about your side hustle. Chris from HR is on the line here too, just to make sure that we handle this the right way.
That's right.
I've been waiting for this moment my whole life.
Yeah.
So Jeff, here's my approach. Like, and I don't know that I don't know that I have a great amount of experience here, but I've definitely had people where I've like kind of been suspicious. And I think part of the hard part is like, it's a very gray line between a hobby, a side hustle. Maybe just people love posting content on LinkedIn, right? Like, right. I don't know. Is that a side hustle? I'm not the right person to decide that, but I think Mark's right. Like, you got to go have a conversation. It's got to come from a place of empathy and support. So my first thing is, hey, if you're doing this thing, I'd love to know about it. I'd love to know both how I can support you, and more importantly to me, like if you're doing it because you're not getting certain things at work, I want to know that, because I want to fix that, whether it's for that person or everybody else in the organization. That to me is a possible root cause, is they're lacking something from their primary hustle. And I think that's my responsibility as a leader to address that. The second part of the conversation, and again, I agree with Mark, it doesn't have to be contentious, is there are expectations in every role in what should be every revenue organization that exists today, given the climate that we're in. And I think a big challenge for a lot of new leaders is how to clearly communicate those expectations.
Right.
Okay. And so if people don't understand the expectations, then I can't really question anybody for operating outside of those expectations. I think maybe we assume too often that people know what good looks like in a job. And I think as leaders, we've got to do a better job of saying, these are the minimum expectations. This is what good looks like. This is what great looks like. Anything you do above and beyond this 3x to 5x value equation, your call.
Yeah. So let's put the shoe on the other foot, right? How do you as a leader, and I don't know if this is, I've got some stories here as well, but like, how do you know if you're the side hustle?
Oh, so just to take it one step back real quick, that's a really good question. So would you consider a dad or a mom that coaches her kid's little league team 2 nights a week and puts in 4 hours a week at tournaments and does a couple other things with fundraisers and all that? Would you consider that a side hustle?
Absolutely not.
No.
All right.
No.
Even though it's maybe taking 10 hours a week away from the job that they could be perfecting. So like, what's the difference if somebody spends it doing little league stuff with their kids versus, hey, I'm going to do some content and create a little consulting gig or whatever I'm going to do, right? Like, what's the difference?
In my book, there's no difference whatsoever unless they're not meeting the core expectations of their job. And regardless of what they're doing in that other time, whether it's coaching little league or a side hustle, you have to go as a leader, have that expectation conversation. Like, so I guess net, there's no difference for me. I just think a lot more people are willing to say like, hey, Chris, I'm coaching my son's basketball team or my daughter's volleyball team. And this is, occasionally this is going to bleed over into these hours at work. Then, hey, by the way, I run like this really nebulous side hustle thing. And I can never, when I post on LinkedIn, you're never going to really know, am I posting out of value for my side hustle or for my primary hustle? And you don't know until a year or two down the road. Right.
Yeah. If I find out on the side hustle, Jeff, I'm letting the employee go.
Okay.
Like, it's pretty much that simple. Like, I consider it a breach of ethics for you to have something you're doing more than you're doing for me when I'm paying you for a full-time job. Let's get serious here. Like, we are paying reps, whatever, for a full-time job. Full-time job is commonly understood to be 40 hours a week. If you're not giving me something close to that, then you are not meeting your end of the contract, and we need to talk or we need to move you out. Like, that's just how it goes. Like, paying somebody $120,000 to work 20 hours a week. Like, listen, that's just not acceptable when the expectation is 40.
But so Mark, you're saying though, only in the case where you get surprised after the fact by it. Because to your point earlier, if somebody's coaching their son's basketball team and on Friday afternoons, if during basketball season, every other Friday afternoon, they have to leave to go to a tournament, as long as they're meeting their expectations and they were upfront about that, all good there, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't like, I think Jeff's question is funny, but it's also a super great point, which is just like, don't let me be your side hustle if I'm paying you for a full-time job. And if I find out about it and you don't tell me about it, we're going to have problems.
Yeah.
Because you're hiding stuff from me. What else are you hiding from me? I don't know. I can't trust. You guys know me. I got to trust the people I work with. And if I don't, like, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work in my culture. It doesn't work in my psyche. I can't deal with it. I've worked with people I don't trust. And you know what? Like, one of them, I think, we all know. And I'm never doing that again. I'm never going to work with somebody I don't trust. I'll fucking quit before I work with somebody I don't trust again.
Yeah, I think I'm reminded over and over in my career that literally life is too short to go spend your time with people that you don't trust. And so I think that everyone's got their tipping point, if you will, or their non-negotiables. And Mark, it sounds like that's definitely one for you.
Just be honest and open with me, and we can come to an agreement on what should be doing. And like to Chris's point, if you're producing, like, I don't care what you're doing. Yeah. Most of the time. And I'll encourage you in it because momentum begets momentum. Right. So whatever.
Yeah. I think we've like a lot of things. The answer here is simple, but maybe not easy. Right. Like, we all know what the answer is, like really clear communication, build trust, set expectations. Again, the premise of this whole podcast is we don't often train or educate new leaders in organizations on how to do those things, like how to build trust, how to have really crisp, clear communication. And that's something I think that companies have to get a lot better at.
So when we worked together, Chris, I trusted you implicitly. If you told me you needed something, I don't think I ever questioned you. I might like try to understand or whatever. Did you feel the same about me? Did you, I mean, you can be honest.
100%.
So why do you think we got to that point? Like, because we didn't know each other before we worked together.
One thing like jumps out of my head, Mark, we said it to each other like probably an awkward amount of times. Like, I mean, we started a lot of our early conversations like, hey, you bring this background and skill set and capabilities to the table. Hey, you bring this. Because of that, I trust you. If you say go do X, we're going to go do X. Like we were really crisp about that. And I think, I don't know, like you just manifest that, right? If you say this is what we're doing, eventually that is what you're doing, right?
Oh, to your point of your podcast, like that might be a formula. Is like first thing a leader should do is like, what are your strengths? What are my strengths? Where do I need to trust you to have my back and fix my weaknesses? And where can you trust me? And like, let's start there. And then that just bleeds into everything else. Like Chris has invited me many times to his cabin in Montana. Like you don't just do that with people that you don't trust, right? But that are professional trust in a key area where Chris was an enterprise selling expert. I was not. I trusted him that. Then that bled into other areas where he was helping us with value creation and all this other stuff and then it bled into personal trust. And like, to me, you got to start with the seed, and maybe a great seed for many first and second line managers to start with is like define what strengths and weaknesses are of the people and like explicitly talk about these are the areas of trust that we need to have for this partnership to work. And then trust grows once you really establish it.
Well, I think on that note, that ends up
myself stuff here. Let's go.
Yeah, no, this puts the perfect bow on the conversation. Mark, when we reached out to you and said, hey, listen, we wanted to have you on the podcast. We wanted to talk about side hustles. Chris and I had a pretty strong inclination that this would be a rich conversation that navigated a bunch of complex topics, and you absolutely didn't disappoint, and really appreciate your perspective and the wisdom you've shared with our audience today. So thank you very much.
Anytime.
Appreciate you, Mark.
Appreciate y'all.